Oh, was machst du? How's everybody doing? Everybody okay? Good. Friends, today we're going to learn together Daf Mem Gimel of Masechta Shabbis. The daf begins with a continuation of yesterday's discussion, which was there was a statement of Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said that even though they said that you may not put a kli under the chicken, however, you may cover it, right? You may not put a kli under a chicken to receive the egg. However, you may cover a chicken. You may cover the egg with a kli. Okay. So yesterday we discussed Rabba's take on that situation, which was right, exactly. So Rabba's take on the situation was that, you can only bring a kli if the thing that you're bringing it for is something that you're allowed to move on Shabbos, right? And therefore, since an egg is muktza, so you can't bring this, a receptacle to receive this muktza egg. You can't move a receptacle for that purpose on Shabbos. However, he says that is only if it is not a common situation, such as a chicken laying an egg on a slant, on a decline where it's going to break. However, if the chicken were to lay an egg in a garbage dump, which is more common, you would be able to take a kli and bring it over and cover the egg so it doesn't get trampled on. Okay, that was Rabba's opinion from yesterday. Now today we're continuing with Rav Yosef's take on the situation. In what cases are you allowed to bring a kli on Shabbos? We are going to get to another opinion of Rabbi Yitzchak regarding these muktza kind of situations. We are going to talk about what do you do if there is a corpse that is out in the sun. So now a corpse is muktza. So what do you do if there's a corpse out in the sun? What do you do if there is a corpse in a burning house and you want to get the corpse out of the house? But again, the corpse is muktza. So we're going to talk about these things. So I don't know if I necessarily made this crystal clear, but the idea is today the focus is going to be a continuation of the laws of muktza, which I think is pretty interesting since muktza is such a big part of Shabbos, at least at this day and age when there is muktza. Let's go weiter in Shas, friends. Okay, we're going to start in Daf Mem Gimel, about 6-7 lines into the page. Rav Yosef, Omar, said Rav Yosef, Hainu taimad Rav Chisda. This is Rav Chisda's reasoning. This is why Rav Chisda says that you would not be allowed to bring over this kli for the egg. Mishum dekamevatel kli me hichano. Because, as Rashi mentioned yesterday, that if you were to bring over this receptacle and the chicken were to lay an egg into this receptacle, and now this receptacle is containing something that's muktza, because this egg is muktza, it's nolad, it was something that came into being on Shabbos. So now you effectively are unable to use this kli anymore because it's got muktza in it, you can't move it. And because you had this kli, which was usable, you had this, let's say it was a bowl, it was usable, you could use it for soup, for chalent, tichveisvos, whatever you want, right? So, and now you can't, so you're being mevatel the kli, you're nullifying it from its being prepared for whatever you wanted it to do, now you can't use it for anything, okay? That's the problem, right? And that's why Rav Chisda says that you can't take a receptacle and put it under the chicken to receive the egg, because then you will no longer be able to use this receptacle on Shabbos. Eis ve'abaye. Abaye asks Akasha on his Rebbe Rav Yosef. Chavis shel tevel shenishbira. What if you have a barrel? We're gonna have many overlapping questions. The same questions basically that Abaye asked against Rabba yesterday, he's gonna ask against Rav Yosef today. Okay, so remember from yesterday that if you have a barrel and in this barrel is tevel, I assume it's talking about, let's say, tevel wine that was untied, and then the barrel breaks. So it says that you're allowed to rush and bring over, right, mevi kli acher umaniach tachtel, you could bring another kli, receptacle, and put it under the barrel so that whatever wine is leaking, whatever tevel wine is leaking out will go into the receptacle, not be wasted on the floor and get, lost and ruined. new. So how come you're allowed to do that? How come you're allowed to bring over this kli? Isn't this kli going to get filled up with tevel wine? And you can't drink this tevel wine, therefore it's muktza, and therefore you can't move this kli anymore because it's containing muktza. So Amar Le, Rav Yosef responded, actually, technically speaking, tevel muchanu etzel Shabbos, shem avar v'sikno misukan. So Rav Yosef says, actually, technically speaking, we don't have to consider this tevel wine to be muktza. How come? Because, tevel you're not allowed to drink. Sure, exactly. If this wine is tevel, you can't drink it. That's true. However, if you separate the tithes from it, you can drink it. Now, midrabanan, we don't separate tithes on Shabbos because it's misakin. But if you did separate tithes, you would be allowed to drink it. So it's not like this wine is objectively muktza. Theoretically, you could separate the tithes, albeit violating a din d'Rabbanan, and then you'd be able to drink it and it wouldn't be muktza. So because theoretically you could do that, so this, the tevel wine is not considered muktza, and you're actually technically not being mevatel the kli meichanu. Okay, fine. Next question. Nosnin kli tachas haner l'kabel nitzotzis. What about the fact that we say that you're allowed to put a kli under a candle so that whatever like ashes fall off from the wick will fall into the kli and not onto your table? But aren't you going to be mevatel kli meichanu? Once this kli now has these muktza ashes in it, you won't be able to move the kli. Amar Funa Ber Rav Yoshua, nitzotzis ein boin mamish. Nah, come on. You don't have to be concerned about little bits of ashes falling into a bowl. Yeah, sure, you put the bowl under the wick so that the little bits of ashes don't have to fall on your table. But they're not really muktza. I mean, they're like little bits of ash, not like the end of the world, right? So they're not, right? It says ein ben mamish. They don't have any substance. They're ash, and they're not going to be considered muktza, and it's not going to be mevatel this kli. It's not like, oh wow, this kli is holding muktza, I can't move it. You can move it, it's fine. Next, v'chein korah shenishbira somchin osa b'safsol o baruchos amita. We said that what if a beam in your ceiling breaks, so you can take a bench or a part of the bed and you can use that to prop up the beam. Well, aren't you going to be mevatel the kli meichanu? Now you can no longer use this bench or this bed part because it's being used to prop up the beam. So you had something that you're able to use, and now it's off limits. It's being used. So the Gemara answers, "Dirafi di ba yishakil le." No, they're not. It's not so tight over there. You didn't put the bench or whatever so tight that it would now be impossible to remove it. You would still be able to move it, and therefore it would be okay. Fine. Nosnin kli tachas adelef b'Shabbos. You can put interesting. So you can put a kli under a drip on Shabbos, new. But then once this drippy stuff falls into this kli, won't the kli now be full of muktza, drippy stuff? And then you're going to be mevatel the kli meichanu. So the Gemara answered b'delef arawi. It's talking about drippy stuff that theoretically you could drink. Theoretically you could drink. Or I think Likutei Rashi even says you would theoretically be able to give it to your animal. Things like that. So it's not completely, it doesn't make the kli muktza. Okay. Kofin esasal lifnei afrochin shialu v'yerdu. Okay, what about this other Mishnah that says that you can take a basket and you can put this basket in your chicken coop thing so that the little chickies can climb on it and climb off of it and I guess have a really fun time, Create a little playground for the chickies by putting a little basket and flipping it over in the coop, and then the chickies have a really fun experience. So now, but once the chickies climb on the basket, well then won't the basket now be batel and you won't be able to move it anymore? So kasavar mutter l'taltalo. So Rav Yosef holds that you would be allowed to move this overturned basket even once you put it in the chicken coop. V'atanya asur l'taltalo. But 1 second, we have a brisa that says that you wouldn't be able to move this basket once it's flipped over in the chicken coop. So ba'odan olav. No. That's only as long as the chicks are on top of the basket. Okay? As long as the chicks are on top of the basket, I guess the chicks would be muktza. Maybe it's talking about chicks that like hatched on Shabbos, maybe, and therefore they're like muktza because they're it's like nolad, maybe. I don't know. But either way, the assumption seems to be that these chicks are muktza, and we're just saying that as long as the chicks are on top of the basket, so you won't be able to move it. But the second they get down from the basket, you would be able to move it. So you're not really being mivatal the kli meichanu. 1 second. But we have a brisa that says that even though the chicks are not currently on the basket, it will be forbidden to move this basket because it's muktza. Amar bi'abau, bodan olav kol ben hashmashos. Migodis katsae leven hashmashos is katsae l'chule yoma. So bi'abau, it says that is talking about when we say that even if the chicks are not currently on the basket is still muktza and you can't move it. That's only if the chicks were on top of the basket during the entire Bein Hashmashos period. That since the entire Bein Hashmashos, the chicks were on the basket and the basket was muktza, so then the entire Shabbos, the basket is going to be muktza. However, if on Shabbos morning he goes out and puts a basket, flips it over in the chicken coop, and now the chickens are playing with it, so then only if the chicks are on the basket would the basket be muktza. But once they get down from it, it wouldn't be muktza, and therefore, putting a basket and overturning it in the chicken coop so that the chicks can play with it would not be mevatel kli meichanu, because as long as they're not on the basket, you can remove it. Now, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. So now, it says Rabbi Yitzchak. So it sounds like Rabbi Yitzchak actually has a differing opinion to Rav Chisda. So as where Rav Chisda said that you wouldn't be allowed to take a kli and put it under the chicken so that the egg will fall into the kli, but you would be allowed to flip it over the egg, that would be acceptable, right? I think because Rabbah says that would be talking about in a garbage dump where it's more common for an egg to be laid, so therefore you would be allowed to move a kli in order to, if it's a common situation. According to Rav Yosef, you're not being mevatel kli meichanu. You're just covering the kli, right? It's not like when you put it under the chicken and the egg falls into the kli, what are you going to do? The egg is in the kli, you really can't do anything with the kli anymore. It's been made muktza. However, if you're just flipping it over the egg, well, you can just pick up the kli. So you're not being mevatel at meichanu. Now comes Rav Yitzchak and he says, slightly different than Rav Chisda, which is, Kishem she'ein nosnin kli tachas tanegolis l'kabel beit sasa, kach ein kofin alea kli b'shvil shelo tishaver. Aha. So Rav Yitzchak is a shtickle more chamor, a shtickle stricter, right, than Rav Chisda. And Rabbi Yitzchak says that just like you may not put a kli under the chicken to receive the egg, so too you may not flip over a kli on an egg so that to cover it so that nobody should break it. How come? Kasavar ein klinital ela ledavar anito b'Shabbos. Because Rabbi Yitzchak holds that the only time that you can move a kli on Shabbos is for the purpose of something that is movable on Shabbos. And therefore, if you are bringing this kli for the need of an egg, whether it is to catch an egg or whether it is to turn it over to protect an egg, doesn't matter. The egg is muktza because it was born on Shabbos, and therefore you can't bring over this kli, this receptacle for any purpose pertaining to the egg. Meisvei, we have a kasha against Rabbi Yitzchak. Kol hane tiyuvta, meisvei kol hane tiyuvta. But what about all of these questions that we've been asking against Rabbah and Rav Yosef? What does Rabbi Yitzchak do with them, right? One example, what's one example? Bringing over the kli for the tevel barrel that broke, and now you want the wine to go into this kli, right? But you're going to bring over this kli for something that isn't movable on Shabbos, for something that's muktza, right? So, right, or even for these chicks, right? These chicks that are going to climb on the kli. These chicks apparently are muktza. So why can you bring a basket and flip it over? So he says, Vishani, and Rabbi Yitzchak answers, B'ditzarich limkomo. Aha. It's talking about, so let's just take this basket example. You want to take this basket and put it down for the chicks so that they could play with it. Fine. Now the chicks are muktza. How come I can move this basket for these chicks that are muktza? So the answer is because the basket was, let's say, on my dining room table. It's now lunchtime. I need to use my dining room table. So that is why I'm moving this basket. Now the basket itself isn't muktza, but I'm moving this basket so that I can eat lunch at the table. And once already I'm moving the basket because I need its place, well then I can put it down in the chicken coop and let the chicks play with it. However, I would not milichatchila be allowed to pick up the basket so that I could bring it out to the chicken coop and let the chicks jump on it. Okay? Tashma, come in here. Achaz beitza shenolda b'Shabbos v'achaz beitza shenolda b'Yom Tov. Whether you have an egg that was laid on Shabbos, whether you have an egg that was laid on Yom Tov, ein mitaltlin, you may not move it. Lo lechasos ba'es hakli. You can't use it as like a cork in a bottle. All right, fine. V'lo lismoch ba'kari amita, and you can't use it to put under the leg of your bed to support your bed. I wouldn't have thought that you would want to do that in the first place. I mean, they do say that like eggs can be pretty strong, I guess, but I feel like there are other things that are probably just more reliable. All right, in any event, so if you have an egg that was laid on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, you can't use it as a cork for your bottle and you can't use it to support your bed. However, you would be able to take a receptacle and overturn it and cover the egg with it so that nobody breaks it. Rabbi Yitzchak, didn't you just say that you wouldn't be allowed to do that because you're not allowed to move, right? Ein klinital ella the davar anital b'Shabbos. Hachanami b'tzarich l'mkomo. So Rabbi Yitzchak explains the same way that it's talking about b'tzarich l'mkomo, right? You needed the place wherever that kli was, so you picked up the kli so that you could, use its place, and once you picked it up, then you used it to cover an egg. Fine. Tashma, come in here. Porsin machtzalos agabe avonim b'Shabbos. You're allowed to take a mat. What is that? Is that a cat? Well, cat rhymes with mat. Just in time, Mr. Cat. In any event, where was I? You could take a mat and you can cover rocks with it on Shabbos. Now, rocks are muktza. Well, not necessarily. Oh. It's talking about stones that are sharp, but hopefully not too sharp, that you can use as a wiping stone in the bathroom. And therefore, it was, I guess, set aside before Shabbos, and it wasn't actually muktza. Okay, fine. Tashma, porsen machtzal sagabi levenim b'Shabbos. You can take a mat and you can put it on top of bricks on Shabbos. Now, mistama, those bricks are muktza because you're going to use them for building a house. And you don't build houses on Shabbos. Therefore, these bricks are muktza. And yet we're saying that you're allowed to move this mat so you can cover the bricks with them on Shabbos. So the Gemara answers, they're not muktza. The ishtiur mi binyana the chazyon lemizga alayu. These are bricks that were left over from building a house, so the house has already been built. It's finished. It's standing, and now these bricks are just around, and you can use them for leaning on them, right? As we learned in Masechta Brachos, and as Rashi points out here, the bottom Rashi on the page, Shekol hesebasan kach hoisa yoshev k'tzas v'nishon k'tzas al smolo. That this is how they would lean. They would be sitting a little bit and also leaning on their left side, and I guess they can use these bricks for leaning on. So therefore, they're not actually muktza, and that's why you can, take a mat and put it on top of them. Tashma, come in here. Porsen machtzeles agabe kaveres devorim b'Shabbos. Okay. You can take a mat and you can use it to cover a beehive on Shabbos. When it's hot outside, you can use this mat to protect the beehive from the sun. And when it's rainy outside, you can use this mat to protect the beehive from the rain. As long as your kavana is not to trap the bees inside, because then, tzeda, tzad, is, I believe, an av malacha. So, you wouldn't be allowed to trap the bees. But as long as your intention isn't to trap the bees, you can cover the beehive with the mat, no problem. So the Gemara said, right, so the question being that isn't this beehive muktza? So the Gemara answers that there's honey in the beehive. And because there's honey in the beehive, it's not muktza because you can, get the honey from the beehive. Amr Rav Ukva Mimishan, the Rav Ashi. Now Rav Ukva Mimishan says to Rav Ashi, Rav Ukva Mimishan is a character that we already, interacted with on Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis. It's not a very common name in the Gemara, but he says to Rav Ashi, Tenach bimosachama dikadvash. Well, that answer, the fact that there is honey there, so therefore it's not muktzah, suffices in the summer when the Maaseh there is honey in the beehive. However, but what about in the winter when there is no honey? Well, then why would you be allowed to take a mat to cover the beehive, right? Because we said bachama pnei achamim, gshamim pnei gshamim, and the Gemara is assuming at this point that bachama means in the summer and bigshamim means in the winter, and therefore in the winter there's no honey in the beehive, so it's just simply muktza, and therefore why can I take a mat to protect the beehive in the winter? So the Gemara answers, Lo nitzrucha ela la'osan shtei chalas. It's needed for those two chalos. What are these two chalos? So the beehive is, consists of all these. If I'm using, hopefully I'm using the right terminology, but the beehive is basically made up of all these honeycombs, which are those like octagonal. No, not octagonal. Oh man, I even looked this up. This is polygon. Polygon, I believe, is the six-sided shape. So polygonal, I guess. So the beehive is made up of all of these little polygon things, which I think are called the honeycombs. And anyways, so what you do is in the summer, apparently, I'm not a beekeeper, although it does seem interesting, but apparently what you do is when you go to take the honey, you still leave, bees produce a lot more honey than they actually need. So you can take all, most of the honeycomb, but you leave these two honeycombs, and that's what the bees eat. So because you've left those two honeycombs, so even in the winter there is a shtickle honey over there, and it's those two honeycombs that you leave for the bees themselves. Okay? But that doesn't really help because those two honeycombs are not for us. They're for the bees. So you weren't planning on eating them, so therefore they're muktza. So again, why are you allowed to take this mat in order to protect this honeycomb in the winter when there's really no edible honey there? No, because before Shabbos, he had the kavanah, he said, you know what? Forget about those bees. I'm eating those two last honeycombs. I can't help it. Therefore, it wasn't muktza, because he had a machshava already before Shabbos that he's going to eat them. Halo chashav alayu mai aser? I don't know, you don't have to read it as a question. And you can also say, Halo chashav alayu mai aser? Oh yeah, either way, it doesn't really matter. So, but what if you didn't have machshava, and all you have is these two honeycombs that mistama are for the bees, not for you. So then aser. Well then, you wouldn't be allowed to take this mat and protect the honeycomb in the winter, because there's only two of these honeycombs left, and those are for the bees, they're not for you. Yihachi, hadatani uvavad shelo yiskavin lotzud. Well, 1 second. That brisa said that, you'd be allowed to take this mat and protect the honeycomb as long as you don't have intention to trap the bees in there. But 1 second, apparently that's not the only time when you wouldn't be allowed to bring over the mat. Liflog v'lesne b'dida. Well then, go further and make an additional differentiation, which is bamedvar mamurim kishachishev alein. When do we say that you'd even be allowed to bring over this mat in the first place? That's only if you had the machshava in advance, the foresight in advance, to say that, hey, I want to eat these honeycombs. But if he didn't have this foresight, and he didn't say before Shabbos that he's planning to eat these honeycombs, then he wouldn't be able to bring it along, right? So therefore, if we're saying that the only reason why he's allowed to bring over this mat is because he specifically had intention before Shabbos that he's going to eat these honeycombs, therefore they're not muktza, well then when the Brisa differentiated and said you're only allowed to bring over the mat as long as you don't have intention to trap the bees, well then say the other thing, the other truth as well, which is, the other condition, which is, as long as there's at least 2 honeycombs there, no, as long as you had intention to eat the honey before, these 2 honeycombs beforehand. So, the Gemara gives kind of like a funny answer, because I don't really see how it's like a great answer, but they say, Hakamash Malan, what the Brisa is teaching us is, Afal Pisha Chishev Alein, that even though he had intention to, maybe that's the point, meaning the Brisa wants to focus on the fact that even though he did have intention to eat the honey, and therefore it wasn't muktza, as long as he does not have kavana to trap these bees, it would be permissible to bring over the mat. The reason why I think it's like a weird answer is because that was basically the Gemara's question, right? The Gemara said like, well then, if there's this additional differentiation that this additional factor that he needs to have kavanah to eat it in advance, so then it should say that it needs kavanah to eat it in advance. Then it basically says, yeah, but we want to say that even if he has kavanah in advance, so then he still can't have intention to trap it. But just say that. Like, why doesn't... So you didn't really say that what we're asking is not true, right? We're saying if it's true that he needs to have intention to eat them in advance, well then it should say that. And we're not saying that that's incorrect. We're saying that it still is true. Just for whatever reason, I guess the Brisa wanted to focus on the fact that even if he does have kavanah to eat the things in advance, he still would have to make sure not to trap it, I guess. It's not an amazing answer. Okay. Anyways, the Gemara says money. But then, who the heck is the author of this Brisa? This Brisa seems to be inconsistent. On the one hand, we're saying that he would have to have thought out in advance that he's planning to eat these 2 honeycombs, which means that we're concerned about muktza, because if he didn't think out in advance to eat the honeycombs, he wouldn't be allowed to because they're muktza. Well then, that sounds like a Reb Shimon. No, that sounds like Rabbi Yehuda, who holds of muktza. Yet at the same time, we're also saying that he can bring over the mat as long as his intention is not to trap the bees. So intention is a davar she'eino miskaven thing. Meaning, as long as he doesn't have intention to trap the bees, even if they do end up getting trapped, it's okay because it's davar she'eino miskaven, and that's mutter. Well, that's Reb Shimon, not Reb Yehuda. So like, if he's holding like Rabbi Yehuda, right, when it comes to muktza, well then you should hold like Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to davar she'eino miskaven. And if he's holding like Reb Shimon when it comes to davar she'eino miskaven, then he should hold like Reb Shimon by muktza and say that there's no muktza. So what's the deal? So Reb Shimon, if this Brisa is Reb Shimon, well then leis le muktza. Well, Reb Shimon doesn't hold of muktza, so then why are we talking about he needs to have a kavana in advance to eat this stuff on Shabbos that it won't be muktza? If it's Reb Shimon, he doesn't care about muktza. Rabbi Yehuda, if the author of this Brisa is Rabbi Yehuda, well, kilo miskaven mai have. Hadav shem miskaven aser. Well, if the author of the Brisa is Rabbi Shimon, is Rabbi Yehuda, then why the heck would he say that he can bring the mat to cover the beehive as long as he doesn't have intention to trap the bees? Who cares what his intention is? Rabbi Yehuda holds hadav shem miskaven is aser, even if you have the best of intentions. So Amfort the Gemara, the Olam, Rabbi Yehuda, really, the author of this Brisa is Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so how do we explain this davar she'eino miskaven bit? Mayu v'ovad shelo yiskavin latzud. What does it mean that he can bring over the mat as long as he doesn't have intention to trap the bees? Shlo yasena kimtsuda, that he shouldn't make it into a trap. That's what it means. Make sure that when you bring over the mat, that you leave enough space so that you're not trapping the bees and that they have enough room to get out. Because after all, Rabbi Yehuda would say that if you do end up trapping the bees, you would be chayav, even if it's a davar she'eino miskaven, because he says davar she'eino miskaven is aser. Okay? That was really fancy. So basically we said in the winter, why can you bring over the mat? The answer is because even in the winter, there are those 2 honeycombs, and as long as you have intention to eat them, then they're not muktza. Now Rav Ashi Amar answered Rav Ashi. He gives his own reason. Mikatane bimos achama uvimos geshamim. That brisa doesn't say anything about the summer and the winter. No way. What does it say? It says if it's sunny, you could bring the mat to protect the honeycomb from the sun. And if it's rainy, you could bring out the mat to protect the honeycomb from the rain. It doesn't say that it's specifically summer or winter. Rather, b'yomei Nisan uv'yomei Tishrei, we're talking about Nisan, which we're in right now, and Tishrei. Dika cham vika gsham vika dvash. That in Nisan and in Tishrei, that there are these kind of like turnover months, right, where we have both. We have rain, we have sun, we have honey, and therefore there's still honey, so it's not muktza. And if it's raining, you could take the mat and protect it from the rain. If it's too sunny, you could take the mat and protect it from the sun. But the honey would not be muktza because the honeycombs wouldn't be muktza because there's honey there. Woo! Okay, that wasn't too hard, but it was certainly a nice shakla vitaria. Definitely a nice back and forth over there. Okay, very good. So according to Rabbi Yitzchak, Lemaise, you would not be allowed to move something on Shabbos if the intention for it is going to be for the need of something that is immovable, that is muktza on Shabbos. Very nice, Rabbi Yitzchak. Amlu Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes said, Poku ve'imru Rabbi Yitzchak, go out and tell Rabbi Yitzchak, Kvar tirgma Rav Huna l'shmaitech bebavel. Rav Sheshes said, go and tell Rabbi Yitzchak that Rav Huna is already disseminating your halacha in Bavel, that you would not be allowed to move a kli on Shabbos if it's for the need of something that's muktzah. Tam Rav Huna, that Rav Huna said, Osen mechitza lemeis b'shvil chai, vein osen mechitza lemeis b'shvil meis. You can make a mechitza is what? Like a divider. You can make like a divider, but in this case it's almost like a shade, right? Making like a shady area, right? You can make this separate area for a corpse, as long as it's really for live people. We're going to explain what this means, but not if it's only for the corpse itself, because the corpse is muktza. So you wouldn't be able to move the items, the materials that you need to making this shady area if you're only bringing it for the corpse, because the corpse is muktza. But if you're bringing it for yourself, well, then it would be permitted. Ma'hi, what are we talking about? The Amr of Shmuel bar Yehuda, v'cheintana Shila Mari. The Shmuel bar Yehuda. These are both like somewhat uncommon names, but Shmuel bar Yehuda we had on the other day, actually the same place where we had, right, wasn't it? The same place where we had this, the same place where we had Rav Ukma Mimishan le Rav Ashi Mamish, right before that we had Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda. But we also saw Mari Shila recently, and that I don't remember where. Anyways, so, no, not Mari Shila, Shila Mari. Mesa Muto B'chama. What if you have a corpse and the corpse is outside in the sun and you don't want the corpse to, be rotting? So Ba'im Shnei B'nei Adam V'yoshvim B'tzido. So what you do is you have 2 people come and sit right next to the corpse. Okay. Cham Laim Milimata. Now, if they're sitting on the ground and the ground is baking in the sun and it's getting very hot and uncomfortable for them, right, and the ground itself is getting very uncomfortable to sit on because it's so hot, well then zeh mevi mita v'yoshiv aleh, v'zeh mevi mita v'yoshiv aleh. So what they could do is each one can bring like a bed and sit on the bed so that they don't have to sit on the floor. Okay. Chamloy milamayla. If now the sun is beaming down on them and therefore they need to protect themselves from the sun, well mevim machzelas uforsen alein. Well then they could bring shade. They could bring a mat. They could bring some kind of a shade and cover themselves with this shade, and therefore it won't be so hot for them. Now, zezokef mitasu v'nishmat v'olichlo, v'zezokef mitasu v'nishmat v'olichlo. Now, once already they've gotten to this point, they don't have to stick around the entire day. The guy on one side of the mace can prop up his bed vertically and stand it up. and the guy on the other side of the mace can prop up his bed vertically and stand it up, and they can rest the mat on top of the beds, and they can go somewhere else. And memela what? And it turns out that this shady area, memela, was made, by the bed and the mat, yet it was made, technically speaking, for these people, and that's why it was allowed. So they wouldn't be allowed to bring these materials if they're only bringing it for the corpse to construct a shady area for the corpse. However, if they're doing it to construct a shady area for themselves, well then that's permitted. Itmar. Meis amuto b'chama. If you have a corpse in the sun, Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, so Rav Yehuda says the name of Shmuel, Hovcho mimita lemita. What you could do is, if you want to get it out of the sun, you can kind of move the mace in a sort of kila'achar way, in a shinoi way, in a different kind of way, which is that you can move the mace from one bed to another bed until it's out of the sun. But you wouldn't just be able to pick it up and move it. Rav Chanina bar Shlamya, Mishmei Rav Amar, so said Rav Chanina bar Shlamya in the name of Rav, Maniach olav kikar otinok umutaltalo. You can put a piece of bread, or a loaf of bread, or a baby on the mace, and then you can move the mace. Very interesting. Like, what does that mean? Is that just like a general rule that, like, if you have something that's muktza, you can just like put something that's not muktza on it, and then you can move the muktza thing? I don't know. That seems to be the assumption, at least right now. So you'd be allowed to put a loaf of bread or a baby on the mace, and then you can move the mace. Which is what we also saw, by the way, in Daf Lamed Amud Beis, when David HaMelech died, and his son Shlomo came to the Beis HaMedrash, and he said, look, my father David is dead, and he's out in the sun, how can I move him? And they said that you could put bread or a baby on the king. That's how they said that, right? A dog that's alive is more significant than a dead lion. Okay. So Shmuel says that you can move the mace with a shinoi, and Rav said that you may not move the mace with a shinoi, but if you kind of put something that is not muksa on top of it, well then you can move the mace. So if there is a loaf of bread or a baby, well, everyone would agree. Both Rav and Shmuel would agree that that's the best case scenario. Take the bread or the baby, put it on the corpse, and then you can move the corpse. However, ki plige, where they disagree, is the leis lay, is where they don't have a loaf of bread or a baby. Ma'asavar tiltul manatzad shmei tiltul, ma'asavar lo shmei tiltul. Rav holds that moving something with a shinoi, tiltul manatzad, moving something from the side of it, is considered tiltul, it's considered moving, and therefore it's like you're moving the mace, and the mace is muktza, therefore it's not allowed. Therefore he says only if you have a bread or a baby can you move the mace, but not just, with a shinoi. Whereas Shmuel says no problem, you can move the mace with a shinoi, and that's why he says you can move it from bed to bed. Weiter. Lema kitanoi. Let's say that the machlokas between Rav and Shmuel is machlokas tanoim lemaise. What is this? In matzilin es hameis mipnei adleika. So the Tanna Kama says that you may not save a mace from a fire. There's a fire that's burning in a house. You may not save the mace. Okay, fine. I mean, you're not really going to save him that much, but I guess save him from being burnt. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish said, Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish, Shamaiti shmatzilin es hameis mipnei adleika. It says Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish. I don't know what Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish is, especially he seems to be a Tana. Obviously Reish Lakish, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, is the Amora, Rabbi Yochanan's Chavrusa. I'm not sure who Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish the Tana is, but Seder. He says that he heard that you would be allowed to save a corpse from a fire, from burning in a fire. What are we talking about? My time the Tanna Kama. If it's talking about where we have a loaf of bread or a baby that we could bring into the burning fire and put on top of the mace so that we can save the corpse while, I guess, risking the life of the child or the bread, well then why the heck would the Tanna Kama say that it's not allowed? After all, we have a loaf of bread or a baby that we could bring into the fire and put on top of the mace, and then it wouldn't be muktza and we could take it out. So why would the Tanna Kama say it's not allowed? And if we don't have a loaf of bread or a baby, well then my time to Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish, then how come Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish says that it would be allowed? After all, the corpse is muktza. Why can you move it? So must be that the machlokes between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish is, can I move the corpse with the shinoi? And it must be that the Tanna Kama is saying, no, you can't. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish is saying, yes, you can. So we see that the machlokas of can you move something with the shinoi is actually a machlokas Tanaim. Temar Savar, Tiltul min atzad, Shmei Tiltul. So that says, right, that Tanna Kama says Tiltul min atzad is Tiltul, so you're basically moving a corpse on Shabbos and it's not allowed. Umar Savar lo Shmei Tiltul. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish says that Tiltul min atzad is not Tiltul, and that's why you can move the corpse. Lo, don't say that. No, both the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish agree that moving something with the shinoi is still considered moving it, and you would not be allowed to move the corpse on Shabbos. Well, then how come Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish says that you can remove the corpse from the fire? V'hainu tamed Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish. Demitoch she'adam bahul al meso ilo sharis le asi lechabuye. The answer is that Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish says you're allowed to remove the mace from the house because since a person is so distraught, he's so, crazy. I don't know what the word is, but, out of sorts because he has a relative or somebody close to him that died. If you tried to say to this person, no, you can't get this corpse from the burning fire, you know what he's going to do? He's going to put out the fire. And putting out the fire is an Av Malacha, whereas, right, Mechabe is an Av Malacha. Although I guess technically according to Reb Shimon, maybe Melacha she'ein tzricha legufa, in which case it would be pater. But in any event, Mechabe is at least technically speaking an Av Malacha if you do it right, whereas muktza is definitely midirabanan. So that's why Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish says that you may take out this corpse because of the sensitivity to the predicament of the people close to this corpse. Who will then end up extinguishing the fire. Amr Rabbi Yehuda ben Shila, Amr Reb Asi, Amr Reb Yochanan, halacha, Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish b'meis, that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish when it comes to this corpse, that you would be allowed to remove it from a burning fire. Now the Mishnah had ended with that you may not get hana from it because it is not prepared. What does that mean? So I thought to say that it's talking about, remember, we're talking about this receptacle that you bring over to the candle, so that if there's any oil that's dripping from it, it'll drip into the receptacle and not to the table. And we say that if you do that before Shabbos, it's no problem. However, you can't get hana from it because it's not prepared. So I was thinking, even if no oil ends up dripping into the receptacle, you still wouldn't be able to use the receptacle because, you had no intention to use it on Shabbos since you figured that it would be full of this oil. I'm not sure I don't know that's wrong, but the Gemara seems to, I think, be referring to actually the contents, the oil that actually would get into this receptacle. Good morning, neighbors. So the Gemara seems to be talking about the contents of the receptacle. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Mosa Hashemen shebener v'shebekaira, whatever leftover oil remains in the candle, right? So you had this candle burning on Shabbos, and then the candle went out. Whatever oil is left over in the candle, or let's say instead of a candle was just like a bowl that was full of oil and you put a wick in there. So whatever oil is left in the bowl, okay, also you're not allowed to move it. Reb Shimon matir, Shimon says mutter, mistama. It's a classic machlokas of do you hold of muktza or not. So Reb Shimon would say it's mutter because it doesn't hold of muktza. Who would be the Tanna Kama? I don't know. Rabbi Yehuda holds of muktza. We also said Rabbi Nechemia holds of muktza. So maybe it's Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Nechemia. Okie dokie. Well, that's a wrap. Daf Lamed Gimel of Masechta Shabbos. It was a good daf, right? Thought it was cool. Had like just the right amount of shakla v'tarya, but also interesting stuff. Muktza. What do you guys think? Anyways, recap. So we started off with Rav Yosef's explanation of Rav Chista's statement where he said that you would not be allowed to put a kli under a chicken, but you would be allowed to put it, cover an egg so it doesn't break. So Rav Yosef said it's an issue of, right, the question is, mevatel kli me'echanu, right? The thing is, if you were to put a kli, a receptacle under the chicken to receive the egg, well then you would no longer be allowed to use this kli for the rest of Shabbos, and you'd be mevatel kli me'echanu. Okay. Now comes Rav Yitzchak, who has a different take than Rav Chista, and he says actually just like you may not put a kli under a chicken, you also cannot flip it over the egg, because he holds ein kli nital ela litzorech davar nitel b'Shabbos, right? That you can only move a kli if it's with the intention of using it with something that's mutter to be moved on Shabbos. Meaning, if you're taking this kli so you could, have it to, for an egg, well, an egg that's laid on Shabbos is muktza. And therefore, since you can't move the egg, so you also can't bring a kli for the egg. Okay? And then we asked all sorts of questions. Fine. We ultimately got into that beehive, and we talked about, specifically having kavana, in the winter where there's only 2 honeycombs which are for the bees, you'd specifically have to have kavana before and said it wouldn't be muktza. Beseder, standard kind of like muktza stuff, but as long as it's not muktza, then you would be able to bring over the kli. Fine. Next, what do you do if there is a corpse that is out in the sun and you want to get it in the shade? So you can kind of have that thing where 2 people go and then they get hot, so they get a bed, then they get shade, and that is how they build it. But you would not be allowed to bring these things for the mace because you can't move something for the mace on Shabbos. What if you want to move the actual mace? So Rav says you would only be allowed to move the mace if you have like a loaf of bread or a baby that you can put on the mace. Then you can move the mace. Shmuel agrees with that, yet he goes one step further, which is said that even if you just move it like from bed to bed, you do it with a shinoi, you move with a shinoi that is acceptable. Then we got into the question of, is tiltul menatzad considered tiltul or not? If you move something with a shinoi, is it considered a shinoi or not? So Rav seems to say it would be considered tiltul and you can't do it. Shmuel seems to say that it wouldn't be considered tiltul and it would be okay to do it. We then tried to say that maybe it's a machlokas tanaim. We said that it's not a machlokas tanaim. And finally, we talked about saving a corpse from a fire, where we say that where Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish says that you would be able to remove the corpse from the fire because, since people get very sensitive when it comes to people that they're close to who died, if we don't let them remove the corpse, then they might actually try to extinguish the fire, which is mechabe. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed Daf Mem Gimel of Masechta Shabbos. I hope you have a great day, great night, great everything. Peace.